clerk please call the roll?
Good morning, everyone. Calling the roll for the Monday, July 8th Board of Control meeting. It's now 11:04 a.m. We have Nan Baker, Dale Miller, Trevor Mackler serving as an alternate for Dan Brady, Mike Chambers serving as an alternate for Mike Dever, Dennis Kennedy serving as an alternate for Armin Budish,
Here.
Lenora Lockett. We have a quorum.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a review of the minutes of the Board of Control meeting of July 1st. Everybody's had a chance to review those. Are there any comments or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, I will make a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor of approval of the minutes indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The Board of Control minutes are approved. Is there any public comment today?
No public comment at this time.
Are there any tabled items?
And no tabled items.
Therefore, we will move on to the first scheduled item.
Item number BC 2019-509, Department of Public Works, recommending a payment to Northeast Ohio Area Coordinating Agency in the amount not to exceed $221,238 for annual membership dues, and it's for the period July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020.
Mike Chambers, Public Works. We're asking for approval of this item. As you all know, NOAC is the federally designated metropolitan planning organization for Northeastern Ohio, and this is our share. Once again, this is what brings us our 80% federal funds for a lot of our projects.
Are there any questions related to this item? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the item. Is there a second? Second by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor of approval indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? The item is approved.
Next item, item BC 2019-510, Department of Public Works, submitting an amendment to a contract with Karen Eskanofsky, DVM, for professional veterinary services, and it's for the period April 1st, 2015 through March 31st, 2019, to extend the time period to March 31st, 2020, and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $90,000.
Good morning, Tom Pavich, Department of Public Works. This item, we're looking for a one-year amendment, adding additional funds for $90,000. It's not to exceed, so it's an as-needed service. This is with Karen Ganofsky. She's an on-site vet service provider. It is 3 months late. I think I've explained in one of the questions that we had. We engaged this vendor fairly early. We had a difficulty obtaining required documents like insurance and a few of the other forms. And there were some appropriation funding issues as well. The original process was an RFQ process. In 2015, they were the only vendor that submitted a proposal. Again, this is just a one-year amendment for $90,000.
Are there any questions related to this item? Councilwoman Baker.
So this is this a 4-year contract?
It was originally a 4-year contract. This would make it a 5-year. The intent is to go back out. This was an RFQ, request for qualifications. Okay. One of the qualifications when they did this in 2015, I researched, was to have a vet that would do on-site services, and I think that was one of the specifications. It only provided one bidder, but during the third quarter of this year, we're going to be releasing another RFQ for the same service just to see what's out in the market.
I don't know if I heard, did you say why you didn't do it before this contract ended? For an RFQ, back in beginning of the year?
We've been working on a lot of other contracts, so we engaged this vendor in January to do an amendment. We knew we were pinched for time to do another RFQ process, so that's why we're looking to do just a one-year amendment, knowing that at the end of this year we're going to go out for a new RFP or RFQ process.
Mike Chambers here as well. Knowing, speaking with Mindy, this doctor, it's a labor of love. It's not like we had, last time indicated, when he had one person. Yeah. They're very pleased with her. Her rates are reasonable. She, it saves us transportation costs to and from by her coming here. So it's kind of a unique situation. And as Tom indicated, we should probably go out again and see what happens, but we felt very comfortable with this person.
And during this amendment, she is holding the same rates as 2015. So, that's kind of unheard of with the cost of everything going up with inflation. So, with the ability for her to be on site as needed and to hold the same prices for up to 5 years, it's pretty good.
Yeah, and I agree with all that. That's all good. It's just that it was a 4-year contract. and
Correct.
If we were going to go out for an RFQ, we should have done it within probably the 4 years instead of extending and then going out. I mean, we're going to go out anyway. Why not do it within the time period that was part of the contract? That's my only, I'm sure they're good. I'm sure they would probably rise to the top.
Correct.
And we appreciate their services, but just business probably should have been done 6 months ago.
Would second that opinion. Mr. McAleer.
Tom, has she been providing services since the contract
No.
expired?
No, we have other means to do services she provides, through exemptions or other contracts. So to answer your question, no.
And then, do we pay her a set amount per month, or is it just on a per service?
Per service as needed. And it fluctuates depending on the time of the year, certain times of the year you see more requests versus others.
Any other questions? So we would look forward then to a process to put together a
Absolutely.
bid for veterinary services.
Yes.
Okay, in light of that, for this particular item, I will make a motion to approve the item. Is there a second? Second by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The item is approved.
Thank you.
Next item, item BC 2019-511, Department of Development, submitting a contract with the Cuyahoga County Land Reutilization Corporation in the total amount not to exceed $3,902,000 for administration of the demolition of vacant, abandoned, nuisance, or blighted structures for various municipalities in connection with Round 9 of the Cuyahoga County Property Demolition Program. And it's for the period July 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2020 for the following municipalities: City of Brook Park in the amount not to exceed $200,000, City of East Cleveland in the amount not to exceed $2 million, City of Garfield Heights in the amount not to exceed $992,000, City of Maple Heights in the amount not to exceed $350,000, City of Middleburg Heights in the amount not to exceed $100,000, and City of Warrensville Heights in the amount not to exceed $260,000.
Good morning, Sarah Parks Jackson with the Department of Development. This demolition grant allows the Cuyahoga County Land Bank to provide demolition services to those cities as identified. The demolitions will consist of 9 commercial and 208 residential structures. The balance in the fund approximately today is $3.2 million. That number could go up based on contracts that get decertified.
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions related to this item? Councilwoman Baker?
In looking at the explanation, I thought I read 3.2 million was the underutilized funds, but is that the funds that are left and then underutilized funds is attached to that? Or what is the balance that are you anticipating?
The balance as we know it today is 3.2. Now we anticipate that that could go up because of unused or underutilized funds.
Any idea what that new amount would be?
As contracts expire, then we're able to determine what those numbers are.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Mr. McAleer?
Sir, with all the cities here, do you know how many approximately parcels we're talking about? How many demos?
208 residential and 9 commercial.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the item. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Miller. All those in favor of approval indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The item's approved.
Next item is a two-part item. Item number BC 2019-512, Department of Development. A, submitting an RFP exemption which will result in an award recommendation to North Coast Homes, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $258,386 for acquisition and renovation of existing housing for rental to adults with disabilities. And it's for the period May 1st, 2019 through April 30th, 2021. And B, recommending the award in connection with said RFP exemption.
Sarah Parks Jackson, Department of Development. This is a federally funded with home dollars award to North Coast Chodo Homes. North Coast Choto Homes is a community housing development organization, whereas HUD requires that we provide those type of organizations 15% of our home allocation. They do acquisition and purchase of single-family homes to benefit developmentally disabled adults.
Any questions for Sarah? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the item. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor of approval indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The item is approved. Thank you.
Next item, BC 2019-513, Department of Development, submitting an agreement with the Village of North Randall in the amount not to exceed $100,000 for demolition of vacant, abandoned, nuisance, or blighted structures in connection with Round 8 of the Cuyahoga County Property Demolition Program, and is for the period July 8, 2019 through December 31st, 2019.
Sarah Parks Jackson, Department of Development. This is a grant agreement with the Village of North Randall, who had a independent contractor do the demolition of the hotel located at the Amazon site. This grant will offset the cost of that remediation and demolition of the hotel.
Any questions on this item? I'd like to say thanks, Sarah, because I got a lot of phone calls about where these payments were. So thank you for addressing that. And I will move to approve the item. Is there a second? Second by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor of approval indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The item is approved. Thank you.
Item BC 2019-514, Department of Information Technology, submitting an amendment to a contract with Highland Software, Inc. for on-base software maintenance and professional services, and is for the period January 1st, 2017 through December 31st, 2018, to extend the time period to December 31st, 2019, to modify the scope of services by integrating on-base Agenda Manager into the Enterprise Resource Planning System, to make budget line item revisions effective June 11th, 2019. No additional funds required.
Janelle Green, Department of IT. As Andrea stated, this is an amendment to the Agenda Manager portion of the contract with Highland this is for professional services to run into the end of the year. This item is late due to a number of factors. One, our county contract leads left in the midst of all of this. Also, we've been in the process of consolidating licenses between IT and HHS, as well as Highland has transitioned the account management team on our account during the process of all this, and also legal negotiations. No work has been done on this portion of the contract since December 31st of 2018, and Highland is not necessarily, we don't know if they're the only vendor that can provide this service, but this particular project requires direct changes to their code base, and they've been working on this project since its inception in 2016, so we wanted to complete the project in order to get this portion moving along with the ERP project. If there are further questions, I do have John Scheffler here to answer further questions.
I just have a comment for the members of the board. I have some questions about these things that I'm going to need to get some more detail on, so I would, unless anybody has any reservations, I'd like to hold this item. Mr. McAleer? Councilman Miller?
I'm fine with holding it for more information, but I do want to ask a question, which is as to how this additional work can be accomplished without any additional funds being expended.
We had, with this particular contract, this was funded with funds that are in the innovations budget. So we do have funds remaining left in that particular contract amount. So we were just using those remaining funds to complete the project. So it wouldn't need to have any more funds added on. We're just extending the time.
And roughly how much is the cost of the remaining work that needs to be done?
There's about 150 hours left of work. that we have available. So what we're planning to do is use Highland to basically deploy the solution into production because they're the most knowledgeable experts in the system. And then obviously, as Janelle mentioned, it's a prerequisite for the ERP procurement system. So it's a critical piece for that go live.
Councilwoman Baker?
Given that explanation of nothing has been done since the end of the year, I heard you just say?
Highland has not done anything on the contract. We have internal on-base administrators that have been working on this project internally. So it came to a point where they couldn't move further into the project.
So when we ask about have any payments made to Highland since 12/31, and has Highland done any work since 12/31, the answer to both are no. Is that
Correct.
still?
No.
You still agree with that? Nothing has been done on their part. Everything's been done internally by us?
Correct.
Using
For
old
agenda.
money?
We have on-base administrators that are county employees that have been doing as much as they could on the project to move it forward.
Okay.
Mr. McAleer?
Janelle, can you just provide a little bit of detail what scope of services we are modifying with this agreement?
I don't know if John wants to answer that.
Scope.
Yeah, because the item reads, we're extending the time period and to modify the scope of services.
I think the scope is, it's pretty much the same scope as originally. It's related to the agenda manager project. The timeline is extended. So we originally wanted to go live last year, but when we worked with the business, they wanted to align the ERP solution with the agenda piece. So that's why we.
So just to confirm or clarify, the only thing we're doing, the only thing we would be doing with this particular item is to extend the time period?
Correct. It's still the same agenda manager work. We're extending the time period from December 31st of 18 to December 31st of 19.
And that's where I guess I'm a little confused, because if the only thing we're doing is extending the time period, one of the reasons stated for why it's 7 months late is that it was going through legal negotiations. So, I mean, how much time do these legal negotiations take to just extend the time period if we weren't doing anything else?
There was, as I previously stated, it was a part of a larger conversation with Highland. So we have a number of projects moving along with them. So we have agenda manager is one piece. We have the consolidation of licenses and the maintenance for IT and HHS. And also we have another project, which is child support tracking. So with all of those projects kind of coming into that conversation, that's what extended the time with Highland.
Are those all separate contracts though? Right?
Yes, they're each separate items.
And we're not paying for one service out of different contracts that we shouldn't be, right? Just wanna make sure we're not.
We had an issue where the wrong contract numbers were being paid, and we corrected that at the beginning of this year.
Was any of the issues surrounded this particular item? Were we paying for this service out of a different contract?
It's actually the same contract. So we have agenda manager and the licenses and support they have the same contract number, but they have different suffixes. So that was a part of the person who processes our invoices. We're putting the wrong suffix on those invoices. So we did correct that in cooperation with the internal accounting team earlier this year.
And the answers to the advanced questions that we sent over, I know there were a couple that said would be sent in a separate note, so I would just say if we could get those prior to it being on the next agenda.
Sure. Unfortunately, my computer crashed this morning. I was trying to answer the questions, or else I would have. And that took about an hour for it to come back up, unfortunately.
Councilwoman Baker?
Just a legal question. The contract ended 12/31/18. Can we extend a contract that has been 7 months past the date of the contract?
Koski, Assistant Law Director. As long as both parties are in agreement, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to do that.
May I ask if that is a good policy? that we do that? And has that happened on other occasions? And what would you suggest perhaps we do so that I would not think that extending a contract that's already 7 months past the date is really a good policy?
Jared Zabertowski, I would leave policy decisions to this body, but I'm happy to, follow up and give you some ideas if you would like.
Mr. Mackler.
I don't know if we could have this before the next meeting though too, but could we try to see, just considering the conversation around Highland and the relationship with the county over the last couple years, to see if other vendors, if it's possible, if other vendors can do this?
Well, this one is ending a project that was already allocated to this particular project. But I do understand that what you're requesting. We can only ask because this is development work that's again directly changing their code base and their systems. So we have that conversation with Highland to see if that's something that is possible. But pushing this back and trying to go out for bid or something like that could delay other things because this is going into ERP and stuff like that. But again, we can have that conversation.
And that's where I struggle with that because of it being nearly 7 months late, and now we might be in a position where we don't have a choice unless we want to delay the ERP project even further. So,
Understood.
But anything you can provide would be helpful.
Understood.
So, do I need to make a motion to hold the item, or can we just make a decision to?
You don't need a motion to hold the item, no.
Okay, so unless there's any objection from me, we'll hold this till next week. Okay, thank you. Next item?
Next item is a two-part item. Item number BC 2019-516, Department of Human Resources. A, submitting an RFP exemption on requisition 45814, which will result in an award recommendation to Lee Hecht Harrison LLC in the amount not to exceed $33,000. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I apologize, I skipped one. Item number BC 2019-515. Let me make sure. Department of Human Resources, submitting an RFP exemption on requisition 46178, which will result in an award recommendation to Works Time LLC in the amount not to exceed $200,000 for Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act third-party administrator services, and is for the period May 1st, 2019 through April 30th, 2021. And B, recommending the award in connection with said RFP exemption.
Good morning, Pat Smock on behalf of the Department of Human Resources. This is for the mandated ACA reporting. It includes monthly tracking of benefits eligibility for each employee, submission of documentation to the IRS, and the annual 1095-C forms that employees receive. This originally was an RFP, and this vendor was selected from a pool of 3. This appears as an RFP exemption rather than an amendment today because the vendor's legal department would not approve amendment language due to a change in company ownership. We're asking to extend the services through April of 2021. At that time, the ERP module will have tracked enough history that they'll have the ability to report out, so a contract for these services should not be necessary. This is tardy due to the protracted contracting process, mostly due to the change in ownership. We had 3 staffing changes with the staff members we were working with, et cetera. And we appreciate your consideration of the request.
Thank you, Pat. Any questions on this item? How much is the contract just a flat amount, Pat, or is it based on some kind of rate?
Sorry, it's a not to exceed amount based on per employee per month, and then there's mailing of the 1095s, et cetera, so it's a not to exceed amount.
So how much do we spend last year? Do you know?
I have $85,000 in my head.
Pocket?
Certainly. I could certainly follow up on that, though, however. We built a little extra into this contract just to make sure we wouldn't have to come back for an amendment, however.
And, when you bring up like the mailing of those 1095Cs, can't we look into somehow providing that information electronically to everybody since it's 2019?
I could look into that as
You
well.
know, kind of
I'm
like
not sure-
W-2s.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the requirements
Yeah,
are, but I can
that's-
look into
it
that.
just- There may be a statutory requirement that it be mailed, but I would think if you don't have to mail the W-2s, you wouldn't have to mail those. Just, we could talk about it.
We'll look into that, absolutely.
Any other questions? Councilman Miller?
Is this a contract that we should be able to process on time under normal circumstances?
It really is. We started this process in November, just the decision if to amend or to go out for bid. And then we started with the vendor in January. And it's been the contract for from HEC for our department. Normally, this should have been taken care of in March and before the board. That was certainly our intent.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the item. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Miller. All those in favor of approval indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The item is approved.
For BC 18-516, Department of Human Resources. It's a two-part item. A, submitting an RFP exemption on requisition 45814, which will result in an award recommendation to Lee Hecht Harrison LLC in the amount not to exceed $33,300 for outplacement programs and related services for county employees, and is for the period July 8th, 2019 through December 31st, 2019. And B, recommending the award in connection with said RFP exemption.
Pat Smock on behalf of Human Resources. Again, this is for outplacement assistance for any sheriff medical staff who have chosen to participate. This was included as part of the written agreements with the unions that represent the employees that were impacted by the Metro Health Medical Services contract. We did solicit 3 vendors, and I provided information in the backup documentation of the plans that each of the 3 vendors provided, and we selected this particular vendor. It is a not-to-exceed amount. We're not sure what the participation will be. We haven't had any employees step forward to say they want to participate at this point, but we do have to have this based on the agreements with the unions, and we appreciate your consideration.
Any questions on this item? Mr. Meckler.
Pat, you got a couple quotes from a couple different vendors, right? And this is the best price, best and lowest price.
We had best and lowest. We had 3 quotes from 3 different vendors. We provided that information. We wanted to get the most robust plan. This provides 3 months of services for the employees. Obviously, there were some that were lower, including from this vendor that was a 1-month service. What was particularly attractive about this particular vendor is they provide a virtual as well as a live service, so you can go to their offices in Independence here in the county, or you can do it virtually at home, et cetera. And we just want to provide both those opportunities for the employees that are impacted.
Any other questions? Councilwoman Baker?
So this is not to exceed $33,300. If no one takes advantage, then that money will just not be spent?
Correct, Councilman. There would be no cost. Exactly. It's $1,850 per employee for the 3-month program for a participating employee.
And if I may, the anticipated start completion dates from execution 12/31/19, that means it ends. Beginning, ending, we're looking at maybe, 6 or 7 months?
That's correct, Councilman. We anticipated really employees that are interested participating immediately, but we wanted to provide them the opportunity to use it throughout the whole year, but we do have to draw a line, and we use December 31st as that line.
All right,
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the item. Is there a second? Second by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor of approval of the item indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The item is approved. Thank you.
Next item, BC 2019-517, Department of Human Resources, on behalf of the Fiscal Office Board of Revision, submitting an amendment to a contract with GPI Enterprises, Inc. for temporary staffing services for the period March 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2019, to extend the time period to December 31st, 2019, to expand the scope of services, to add the Department of Human Resources and the position of Records Management Assistant. And it's effective on July 1st, 2019, and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $28,500.
Pat Smock on behalf of Human Resources. Again, this is an amendment to a contract for temporary staffing. The firm was selected through a competitive process, and we're hoping to extend the contract through the end of the year. This would provide 1 staffer as needed for NHR for public records requests and records management. We decided not to hire an employee due to the limited time frame. We think this is a spike in those requests right now. Again, it's a potential and a not to exceed amount. This is coming forward 1 week late because the contract we're amending did end on June 30th, and we just barely missed the deadline to get this on the June 1st meeting. We apologize for that. We appreciate your consideration. I'll add, I'm sorry, sir, I'll also add, we did provide some information. There was a question regarding the number of temporary services and agencies and employees that we have on staff here. We provided everything except for the Sheriff's Department. We didn't hear back from them, but I believe that number is 0. That was really tied with the medical staff, and I think Metro Health is handling that at that point.
Questions from anybody? I have a quick one, Pat. I mean, it says on behalf of the fiscal office, but it's an HR position.
Yes, sir. We're amending a contract that the Board of Revision had with this particular firm. They went through an RFP process and selected them. However, interestingly, the Board of Revision actually never used any of those services. Correct. So
I mean, is there any way we can change the description here? Because it kind of looks like it's coming out of the fiscal office, but it's amending a contract that exists, but it's really for an HR purpose. It's not for anything on the fiscal office.
We can amend it, but the reason why we did it that way is because he was putting it in on behalf of the Human Resources Department, but it's still a fiscal contract. So if they're looking for it to amend it, to tie it in, to say that the contract originally belongs to the fiscal department, we can have that history that ties everything in. That was the only reason why we did it that way. Normally, the fiscal department, Board of Revisions, would have submitted the item on behalf of Human Resources to incorporate that department within their own contract. So again, it's just for a paper trail.
Okay, so I would just say for the record, so everybody knows it's an HR, is it coming out of the HR budget?
It absolutely is. Okay. And we did reach out to the director and her staff at the Board of Revision just to ensure that they were okay with us moving forward with this process, and they were.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilwoman Baker.
Clarification. It says for the position of Records Management Assistant. That sounds more than just a temporary person. Is that a new position that's being filled, or is that what that looks like a title and not just a temporary worker leaving after 6 months?
Councilman, we have a records management administrator on staff. The contract with the Board of Revision specified the particular job titles that they could hire for, so they build a job title into the appendix of the contract, and so we did have to add a job title that speaks to what this person will be doing. Okay. But it's actually not, that I'm aware of, it's not a job title that exists in the county. It's just the title we use to specify what this employee would be doing for the 6-month period.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the item. Is there a second? Second by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor of approval indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The item is approved. Thank you.
Next item BC 2019-518, Department of Health and Human Services, Cuyahoga Job and Family Services, on behalf of the Division of Children and Family Services, submitting an amendment to a contract with Burlington Stores, Inc. for emergency assistance services for the period September 1st, 2012 through April 30th, 2019, for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $475,000.
Good morning, Chris Alexander, Department of Health and Human Services. On behalf of the Department of Children and Family Services, we're seeking an amendment to a current contract, with Burlington Incorporated, who provides emergency clothing assistance to children and families that are in the custody of DCFS and are experiencing a crisis. Families are issued clothing vouchers with a predetermined value based on individual needs. This contract is late. This amendment's late. The contract ended on April 30th. Part of the reason for the contract being late is the time frame for which the dollars are available to allocate to this amendment. In addition, we have been waiting for final invoices to come in from Burlington. The process by which the vouchers are validated and the invoices come in, they have to go to New Jersey and they come back into Cuyahoga County. We did have some pre-questions that arrived. Hopefully they answer some of the questions that you have today. If not, I did bring Audrey Beasley with me from Fiscal Office, if you have further questions about this.
Are there any questions about this item? Mr. McLaren.
Chris, thanks for the answers to the questions. And in one of your responses, I think you mentioned that there will be an amendment to the J.C. Penney clothing contract.
The JCPenney contract did start on May 1st. It's actually the contract that replaced Burlington, which ended on April 30th. The dollars that are allocated, part of the issue is it's difficult to make the projections based on the number of kids we have in care. And in the last year, we have about 420 additional kids in care, which explains some of the usage. The utilization has increased. This current contract with JCPenney is for $475,000. It could be likely used before the end of the contract period, which would be 4/30/2020.
Do you, I know it's early in that contract, but do you have an estimated amount of how much you think the contract amendment would be for?
I do not have that. Come on, there we go.
Hi, Audrey Beasley, Children and Family Services. Based on our first month of utilization under JCPenney, we were running about $50,000 to $60,000 per month. So if you project that out, we're going to be anywhere between $600,000 and $700,000 annually. And that's if it stays the same and our census remains the same.
Thank you. I just, as Chris, as you mentioned, there's been a lot of amendments to the contracts. I think knowing that we have the increased number of children in the county care, I would recommend maybe for the next contract moving forward that we make it a larger dollar amount that would, of course, require council approval. But just because it looks like we have quite history of contract amendments, and I don't want it to appear that we're making the contract for less than $500,000 just so it doesn't have to go to for a council.
I agree 100%. This would actually represent a ninth amendment to that contract. When we consolidated into shared services, we issued not one but two RFPs in 2018 for the clothing. The first RFP did not have any response for our clothing services, unfortunately. Went out to bid again, and the second RFP, we awarded JCPenney the contract. We had about 10 responses to that, so I agree with you 100%. You won't see those numbers of amendments, hopefully, in the near future.
Any other questions?
I would like to make one comment. Right before the meeting, Chris did let me know that there was an error in the item that was submitted by the department for funding source. She states that the funding source is now 100% federal funds.
Thank you for the update. Hearing no other questions. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Meckler.
Chris, is the JCPenney, the one that's not in front of us, but is the JCPenney 100% federal funds now?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Baker.
And will the JCPenney be a longer term?
Still a one-year contract with the option of 2 amendment years if the services remain a priority. So we've gone to the one-year contract process, which is why maybe you see a lot of these amendments. We will bring it out to bid after that. If those 2-year options are, if we actually implement those, we'll take it out to bid again.
Okay. Is there a reason why we don't go out to bid for JCPenney for the full 3 years instead of 2 amendments? I'm just saying.
No, it's just the process that we've used since we've consolidated the shared services.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I will make a motion to approve the item. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Miller. All those in favor of approval indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The item is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is a two-part item, item number BC 2019-519, Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Children and Family Services. A, submitting an RFP exemption on requisition 46193, which will result in an award recommendation to Cedar Point in the amount not to exceed $9,816.40 for the purchase of 110 any-day admission passes and beverage and meal vouchers for 55 graduating youths aging out of custody and 55 adult chaperones, and B, recommending the award in connection with said RFP exemption.
Daniel Basta, Health and Human Services, on behalf of the Division of Children and Family Services. This is for children that are aging out that are currently set to graduate on August 8th. We have a graduation ceremony with independent living. So as a reward for their good grades and graduating on time, the Independent Living Department has offered these 55 tickets. We have 80 graduating, but 55 would meet the criterion, and they need 55 adult chaperones with them. We called Cedar Point, and as was discussed in the previous or the questions before, there was a 10% discount on each ticket. So,
Any questions?
Is this what we've done in the past, or have we had different awards?
no, this is the first time we've done it with Cedar Point.
And what have we done before?
They had awarded them a $500 graduation stipend and also a $300 like starter kit to go to like an apartment or dorm rooms.
Dan, is this like a one-day event, or is this anytime they want to
They
go?
can pick any day they want to go.
What if they don't use them?
If they don't use them, then the ticket is forfeited.
So, I mean, but we're buying 55, but say 20 people go, so we lose the 35 tickets?
I would think so, yes.
I don't know, but there's no way to establish an account with Cedar Point, so when they show the ticket up, we get billed for it?
We asked them to start an account. They did not want to do that. They also asked us if we would pick a particular date. We weren't able to do that because we weren't able to hammer out a date for these children. But the 55 other children were identified based upon their grades and graduating on time.
Any, Councilwoman Baker?
Having kids that go to Cedar Point, they're always looking for coupons and discounts, and 10% isn't really much to be given by Cedar Point. I mean, I think you get a 10% discount pretty much anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Could we have negotiated maybe something a little better, especially buying 110?
We spoke to their group sales department. They said that anytime tickets are $56. So we negotiated down to $49. The drink tickets are normally $8.99, I believe. We got it down to $8.25. They do not provide any discounts on food.
Councilman Miller?
Why did we move off of the awards that we were using in the past and change to this?
They're continuing with those awards, but this is in addition for those that had good grades, exemplary grades.
I share concerns about the logistics of this and whether these tickets are going to be effectively used. This doesn't mean I'm going to vote against it. What it means is that I think this is the kind of thing that we should watch very carefully to see how effectively it's used and whether all or almost all of the tickets are in fact used. And if not, well then we got to come up with a better way to do this in the future.
Yes, we'll have the independent living supervisors monitor each ticket used, and we'll contact Cedar Point directly after the summer to make sure that all those tickets were used, and if they're not, we'll report back.
Okay, fine, thank you.
One fine.
Councilwoman Baker?
It says here that it's reimbursed by TANF funds. Did TANF have any restrictions as to whether or not what we're using these tickets for actually get used, and those type of questions from them?
No, the only restrictions we had was the timeline. That's why we tried to get it in as quick as possible.
Okay. And Title 4E, no
Same.
restrictions.
Mr. McLaren?
Dan, who are the 55 chaperones, the adult chaperones? Is that from independent living, or who are those the adults that are getting the tickets?
Those are going to be identified by independent living. They're not going to be employees. They're going to be just adults that the child knows.
Mr. McLaren?
To the chairman's and Councilman Miller's concerns. Do you know if it's possible if we can buy the tickets on an ongoing basis? So when independent living states, we have 5 kids and the 5 adults, can we buy the 5 at that time and then buy 5 more, 10 more whenever we know that there are more kids that want to go? Or do we have to buy all 110 at the same time?
The only concern with that is I think it would be possibly like splitting invoices at that point, don't you think? Or
I personally would rather be splitting invoices if possible instead of paying for tickets that would be not used. And I don't know if that's something, I think, well, I don't know if that's something Cedar Point would let us do.
Lenora Lockett, Office of Procurement and Diversity. The award is for not to exceed amount of the $9,816. There can be partial payments. I don't want to go on a record as approving splits.
Councilwoman Baker?
Are these transferable? If the child could not go, can they?
yeah, it's for anybody. That's
Anybody.
the tickets aren't based on their name or anything like that. We're just buying 110 tickets with drink vouchers and meal tickets as well.
So if that child who earned this decides not to go, they could give it to a friend of theirs or a family member or anyone who wanted to go.
They could.
Councilman Miller?
Are people on their own as far as transportation to and from Cedar Point?
Yes, they are.
And what about parking? Do they pay their own parking?
Yes, they do.
They do, okay.
Any other questions? Dan, I'm going to vote no on it, just to tell you, because I just think there's too many possibilities there, but not with the idea, but I think the logistics. But so if somebody would like to make a motion to.
Mr. Chair, can I suggest, and I don't know if we have time for this, Dan, but could we potentially hold it just to see if we can buy it on an ongoing basis, so then we know that they are going to use the tickets versus buying all 110 at the same time? Because
Yeah, I just thought he was under some kind of time constraints or with the.
We got it in on time for the TANF timeline, so, or I mean the TANF timeline, so we're good there if you wanted to hold it.
Okay, could we do that then? So we can maybe, like I said, I don't disagree in principle with what's trying to be accomplished, but I just think there's some problems there. I don't want, kids selling tickets to other kids and.
Sure, understood.
Is that okay with everybody? Does anybody have an objection to holding the item for a week? Okay, so that's what we'll do.
Okay,
Thank you.
Next item, item BC 2019-520, Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Children and Family Services, recommending an award on requisition 46168 and enter into an agreement with Corporation for National and Community Service in the amount not to exceed $7,000, and it's for the provision of 14 Vista members to provide volunteer services in connection with the AmeriCorps Vista program, and is for the period July 7th, 2019 through July 7th, through July 7th for 2020.
Good morning again. Chris Alexander, Department of Health and Human Services, on behalf of Children and Family Services. This contract is with the federal agency Corporation for National and Community Service. This is the second year that DCFS has used Vista AmeriCorps volunteers. The plan this year is to use 7 volunteers. The dollars for this contract are strictly go to emergency funds. If the Vista volunteer has any kind of emergency problem, those funds are provided just for emergency. The contract also allows for the child or the volunteer to pay that money back if they do use it. Last year, no funds were used for this purpose, but it's just in the event of an emergency. The goal of the volunteers is to help strengthen organizations that alleviate poverty. Last year, the 7 volunteers that we used helped implementing strategies, website and social media strategies with Health and Human Services. They also worked for Cuyahoga Job and Family Services, assisting with benefit enrollment to families that are eligible for our benefit programs. And we had Vista volunteers that helped strengthen and build our volunteer and community outreach programs through DCFS.
Okay, are there any questions? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the item. Is there a second? Second by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor of approval indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The item is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
521 Court of Common Pleas Corrections Planning Board, recommending an award on requisition 43795 and enter into a contract with Microgenics Corporation, Thermo Fisher Scientific, in the amount not to exceed $349,399.39 for on-site drug detection services, and it's for the period July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2022.
I'm Linda Lagunzad, the Assistant Administrator with the Corrections Planning Board, and this is Shannon Gray, Manager for the Adult Probation Department's Drug Testing Unit. This is a contract with the Microgenics Corporation to furnish the Common Pleas Court's Adult Probation Department with on-site drug testing equipment, supplies, and services for its drug testing unit. The Adult Probation Department utilizes on-site drug testing to monitor drug-abusing offenders in the community as part of the alternative to jail or prison incarceration under both pretrial and post-sentence probation supervision. Drug testing allows probation officers to monitor drug abuse, make appropriate treatment referrals, and link the legal sanctions of the court with the therapeutic processes of drug treatment programs within the community. During the fiscal year 2017-2018, the drug testing unit tested over 100,000 urine specimens, resulting in 1 million tests. These were for illegal drugs, calibration, and quality controls. The number of urine specimens and tests performed has increased by 44% from 2015 to 2017. Marijuana continues to be the most common drug tested in the probation population, followed by ETG, alcohol, cocaine, opiates, oxycodone, amphetamines, fentanyl, PCP, and heroin. During this past November, the Common Pleas Court, we put out an RFP addressing the need for a vendor to provide the equipment, the supplies, and services for the drug testing unit. After a completion of a pre-bidders conference, 3 bidders applied, and they submitted their applications to the court. They were Microgenics, Siemens Healthcare Diagnostics, and Roche Diagnostic Corporation. Each response was scored by a on-site drug detection selection committee. It was 10 individuals, a very thorough committee, and we followed the county's contract selection policies and procedures. Scoring results revealed that the Microgenics Corporation, as the winning bidder, clearly by the highest overall score and the best price.
Are there any questions on this item? Councilman Miller.
How is it determined who is eligible to be out on probation pre-trial as opposed to having to sit in jail waiting for their trial?
That's a question I don't know. That would be up to the probation department,
Right.
as Linda knows.
And the court as well, and depending upon their circumstances and, all of that surrounding their case. So, but again, it's individualized, it's individual specific. And so that's pretty much what I can say at this point. Unless you need more information, I'll be more than happy to contact the probation department to get you that.
And so anybody that's on pre-trial probation are these people who had previously been convicted and been put on probation, and then if they're pre-trial, then they violated their probation? Are these the kind of folks you're talking about?
I mean, that could be in the mix of individuals, of course, but for drug testing, they have to show that there was some incident related to the illegal use of drugs for them to be going through this process, obviously. But yes, is there a cycling process involved with this? There may be. But again, that's incorporated as part of their whole probationary
pretrial experience and in contact with the probation department and the history of these individuals and such like that. But the role of the Corrections Planning Board is to facilitate this process of the RFP process for the probation department. So we did all that oversight in terms of the RFP and the contract awarding.
And how many of the people served are pre-trial and how many are post-trial?
I don't have that information.
Could you find out and get back to me?
So how many individuals are tested pre-trial and post-trial?
Right.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Any other, Councilwoman Baker?
Did you say that this is a new, who did it for us last? Was it one of the three bidders? That
Yes, Microgenics is our current vendor.
is your current vendor?
Right.
And they are now going to continue?
Correct.
Thank you.
Anything else from anybody? Hearing none, I will make a motion to approve the item. Do we have a second? Second by Councilman Miller. All those in favor of approval indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The item is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is a two-part item, item BC 2019-522, Court of Common Pleas, Juvenile Court Division. A, submitting an RFP exemption on requisition 45783, which will result in an award recommendation to MNJ Technologies Direct, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $158,020 for a state contract purchase of 150 replacement HP desktop computers and 40 HP Elite notebooks with carrying cases. And B, recommending the award in connection with said RFP exemption.
Good morning, Sarah Baker, Juvenile Court. This is for the next round of our refresh at the court for replacement desktop computers and the notebooks, and it's just replacing the out-of-date computers that we currently have.
Any questions? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the item. Is there a second? Second by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor of approval of the item indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The item is approved. Thank you.
Next item, BC 2019-523, Court of Common Pleas, Juvenile Court Division, recommending awards on requisition 44964 to various providers in the total amount not to exceed $150,000 for juvenile drug court short-term residential treatment services. And it's for the period July 8th, 2019 through June 30th, 2021 for the following providers: Belfair Jewish Children's Bureau, Cornell Abraxas Group, Inc., and New Directions, Inc.
Good morning, it's Sarah Baker with Juvenile Court. This is for our short-term residential treatment services, and it's only for our drug court youth population. What we were looking for specifically is a short-term stay, so we were looking for about 45 to a 60-day stay, which is different than our traditional residential placement stays, which can run between 6 and 12 months occasionally. And this is for kind of that high need short term for that population only. Now, we did do an RFP for this, and these were the three vendors that applied that actually met our needs and we feel would do a good job. Some of the other vendors that applied must not have correctly understood what we were asking for because they were submitting for the longer term residential treatment.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilwoman Baker.
Where have you been going up till now for these short-term services?
Previously, the vendor that was providing this was New Directions, which is on this contract as well. And they've historically kind of served this population, and they've done a good job with these kids, and they do a good job keeping the timeline where we want it to be.
So is there a reason why New Direction couldn't continue? Were they higher in price, or?
They did continue. They're on this new one. They're the last one.
Oh, I see. So we're actually just expanding it to two more.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And if I just may continue, is there a reason why we couldn't just stay with New Direction? Were they over capacity, or?
We did have some issues getting youth in. There were some issues with wait lists. Plus, we wanted to this had been part of our traditional substance contract, the residential piece, and we wanted to separate it from that. And this hadn't been bid in some time for this population, so we wanted to make sure that we followed that process.
To wrap up,
yes.
How many children do you usually anticipate only needing 45 to 60 days?
The drug court usually sees, on average, maybe about 50 to 60 kids total per year. So for residential, we may only see 20 kids, maybe even less than that. Kind of just
Year?
depends per year.
And even with the 20, you still have waiting lists
Yes, we
for
did.
new direction? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the item. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilwoman Baker. All those in favor of approval indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The item is approved. Thank you.
Next item is a two-part item, item BC 2019-524, Court of Common Pleas Juvenile Court Division. A, submitting an RFP exemption on requisition 45784, which will result in an award recommendation to M&J Technologies Direct, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $9,800 for a state contract purchase of 100 replacement HP Pro Display LED desktop computer monitors. And B, recommending the award in connection with said RFP exemption.
Sarah Baker, Juvenile Court. This is another round of refresh, but just for our monitors this time. We did purchase them off of the state contract.
Any questions? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the item. Is there a second? Second by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor of approval of the item indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The item is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're moving on to exemptions. Item BC 2019-525, Agency of the Inspector General, on behalf of the Department of Law, requesting an exemption from vendor ethics training and registration for arbitrators, conciliators, fact finders, and mediators approved by the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service and/or the State Employment Relations Board that perform labor and employment dispute resolution services on behalf of the county and various unions who represent county employees. And it's for the period July 8th, 2019 through July 7th, 2024.
Mark Griffin, Agency of Inspector General, requesting a 5-year exemption for labor mediators, arbitrators, and conciliators for a 5-year basis. And the grounds for this exemption, similar to many of we have 14 other exemptions that we have granted in the past, is that we may have legal or contractual obligations that require us to pick a particular arbitrator or conciliator. And so in those cases, the requirement of registration can be in conflict with our collective bargaining agreement or our labor requirements under law and under contract. The other irony to this is that we currently have a $10,000 registration exemption for anyone who receives less than $10,000. The result of that is that our very best arbitrators and our best conciliators would be excluded or required to register, and the ones who aren't as good would not. So this makes it consistent throughout the arbitrators and mediators.
Any questions regarding the exemption? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the item. Is there a second? Second by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor of approval indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The item is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're now moving on to the consent agenda, item numbers BC 2019-526 through 528.
And take a moment to review the items, as Andrea indicated, that are on the consent agenda. Are there any questions about any of the items? No. Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Chambers. Thank you. All those in favor of approval of the consent agenda indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The item is approved. Any other business today?
No other business at this time,
Is there any public comment?
and no public comment.
Then I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a second? Second. Second by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor of approval of adjournment, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.